3 months, 92 days, 2,208 hours. That was the exact amount of time since Alia had watched the red taillights of the black SUV disappear into the rain-slicked darkness of the city, taking the only man she had ever truly loved with them. Silence wasn't empty. Alia learned that quickly. Silence was heavy. It had a weight, a texture. It filled her new apartment, a chic industrial loft with exposed brick and high ceilings that screamed independence, like a fog she couldn't wave away. The gallery was booming. The Curo collection had survived the scandal of the attempted robbery, a narrative spun by Diyun's cleanup crew to explain the police presence and the arrest of Leo. The art world loved a survivor story. They called her resilient. They called her the woman who stood her ground against a corporate spy. They didn't know she was just cold. Alia stood in the center of her expanded gallery space, holding a clipboard she wasn't reading. The renovations were finally complete. The walls were a pristine, blinding white. The scent of fresh paint and expensive espresso filled the air. It was perfect. It was everything she had fought Diyun for: her autonomy, her success, her kingdom. So why did it feel like a mausoleum? She walked over to the large bay window that overlooked the busy street below. It was autumn now. The leaves on the trees lining the avenue were turning the color of dried blood and old gold. People were walking by in coats, holding hands, laughing, living. Alia pressed her hand against the cool glass. She remembered the red emergency lights. She remembered the way Diyun had looked at her, not with anger, but with a disappointment so profound it shattered her. "I cannot protect you if you do not trust me." The words echoed in her skull every night. She had chosen to trust a stranger over him. She had chosen Leo's lies over Diyun's protection, and the cost of that choice was her heart. A laugh broke through her thoughts, warm, melodious, and utterly devoid of the shadows that seemed to cling to Alia these days. Alia turned, startled out of her reverie. Standing near the entrance, wrestling with a large, awkward box of supplies, was Jaiwan. Jaiwan was everything Alia felt she had lost. She was soft where Alia had become hard. Her eyes crinkled when she smiled, which was often. She had rented the studio space on the second floor for her art therapy practice 3 weeks ago. Alia had been hesitant at first. She didn't want a tenant. She wanted isolation. But Jaiwan had somehow wormed her way past Alia's defenses with nothing more than herbal tea, an uncanny ability to listen without judging, and a persistent kindness that Alia found impossible to reject. "Need a hand with that?" Alia asked, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She set the clipboard down on a pedestal meant for a bronze bust. Jaiwan blew a strand of hair out of her face, grinning apologetically. "Please, I thought clay would be lighter. It is just mud, right? Why does mud weigh a ton? I swear, gravity works differently in this building. Maybe it's the weight of all this serious art pressing down on us." Alia chuckled, a real, albeit small, sound, and walked over to grab the other end of the box. The weight was substantial, grounding. Together, they maneuvered it toward the elevator, their footsteps echoing in the high-ceilinged space. "You're working late again," Jaiwan noted, her voice gentle as the elevator doors slid shut, enclosing them in a small silver box. "You were here when I left last night, and you were here when I came in this morning. Do you sleep, Alia? Or are you secretly a vampire? I've never seen you eat anything other than espresso beans." "Sleep is for people who don't have an opening night in 2 weeks, Alia deflected, leaning against the metal wall and crossing her arms. "Besides, the quiet helps me think. The city is too loud during the day." Jaiwan studied her. It was a professional habit, the way she looked at people. She didn't dissect them like Diyun did, looking for weaknesses or threats. She looked for cracks so she could pour gold into them. She looked for the hurt child hiding inside the competent adult. "You know," Jaiwan said softly, "the emptiness. It doesn't go away by filling the room with things, or with work. It goes away by letting yourself feel it." Alia stiffened. She hadn't told Jaiwan the details, just that she had gotten out of a complex relationship, just that it ended badly. She hadn't mentioned the Mafia, the gun, or the tattoo that haunted her dreams. She hadn't mentioned that her ex-boyfriend was arguably the most dangerous man in Seoul. "I'm fine, Jaiwan. Really, just busy. The expansion is taking more out of me than I thought." Jaiwan didn't push. She never did. That was why Alia liked her. She just nodded, accepting the boundary, and changed the subject seamlessly. Well, if you ever decide to take a break from conquering the art world, I'm meeting someone for coffee later. You should come. He's new. Alia raised an eyebrow, grateful for the shift in topic. The mysterious new man? You've been smiling at your phone a lot lately. I was beginning to think you were texting a ghost. Jaiwon blushed, looking down at her boots. It's complicated. He's guarded, very intense. He doesn't say much, and he has this wall up that's 10 feet high. But sometimes, when he thinks I'm not looking, he looks so sad it breaks my heart. I think he just needs someone to be safe with. Safe, the word echoed in Alia's mind like a gunshot. Di-yun had wanted to keep her safe, but he had never wanted her to be his safety. He wanted to be the fortress, never the refugee. He wanted to be the king, never the man who needed to rest his head. He sounds like a project, Alia teased gently, though a pang of envy struck her chest. To be someone's safety, that sounded nice. Maybe, Jaiwon admitted with a small shrug, but kindness is underneath the armor. I can feel it. He listens, Alia. He really listens. Like everything I say is the most important thing he's heard all day. The elevator dinged. Alia helped her unload the box into the bright, airy studio filled with colorful paintings and comfortable chairs. She declined the coffee offer, citing inventory checks. She wasn't ready to see happy couples. She wasn't ready to see what moving on looked like. She preferred her mausoleum. Across the city, the atmosphere was diametrically opposed to the warmth of Jaiwon's studio. In a boardroom that sat at the top of a skyscraper piercing the low-hanging clouds, Di-yun sat at the head of a long mahogany table. The view behind him was spectacular, the entire sprawl of Seoul, glittering and alive, a testament to human ambition. He didn't look at it. He looked at the quarterly reports in front of him with eyes that felt like they were filled with sand. The numbers were up. Obsidian Estates had acquired 3 new territories in the last quarter. His family's hold on the construction sector was absolute. The illegitimate businesses, the ones that required shadows, were being phased out or buried so deep no audit could find them. He was doing exactly what he had promised. He was legitimizing the empire. His mother, the matriarch who ruled the family's social calendar and internal politics with an iron fist, sat to his right. She was sipping tea from a delicate porcelain cup, watching him with hawk-like eyes that missed nothing. You are doing well, Di-yun, she said in Korean. Her voice was dry, like rustling leaves. The family is strong. Your uncle is pleased with the Incheon acquisition. Di-yun didn't look up. He flipped a page, the sound sharp in the quiet room. The business is strong, mother. And you, she pressed. Di-yun stopped. He slowly raised his eyes to meet hers. And you are 32. A king needs a queen, not a distraction, not a foreign weakness. A partner who understands our world, who understands the weight of the crown. Di-yun's hand tightened on his pen. The tattoo on his hand, the vines and thorns, seemed to darken against his pale skin. He remembered a woman who didn't understand his world but tried to stay in it anyway. He remembered the way she had looked at him in the gallery, begging him not to leave. Di-yun, please, I love you. The memory was a physical pain, sharp and cutting. I am busy, he said curtly. You are lonely, she corrected, and loneliness breeds mistakes. I have arranged a dinner, the daughter of the Hanwha group. She is elegant, educated in Europe. Quiet. She will not ask questions. She will not cause scenes. She will not get held at gunpoint by corporate spies. She will not be her, Di-yun thought, the ache in his chest a familiar dull throb that he had learned to live with, like a chronic injury. Fine, he said aloud, his voice devoid of emotion. Set it up. He felt nothing. It was just another transaction, another merger. If he couldn't have the fire, he might as well settle for the ice. He had let Alia go to save her. He had broken his own heart to ensure she wasn't a target. If he was miserable, then the plan was working. His misery was the price of her safety. The date with the Hanwha heiress was exactly as predicted. It was at a Michelin star restaurant that smelled of truffle oil and pretension. The conversation was polite, centered on real estate, opera, and the mutual acquaintances of their elite circle. She was beautiful, poised, and utterly terrified of him. When he poured her water, she flinched. When he asked her opinion on the wine, she gave the answer she thought he wanted, her eyes darting to his tattoo and then quickly away. She was auditioning for a role. She wanted to be the wife of the Han heir. She didn't want him. It was suffocating. It felt like being buried alive in velvet. He excused himself early, claiming a security emergency. He didn't even wait for the dessert course. He walked out into the cool night air, loosening his tie, feeling like he couldn't breathe. He told the driver to drive. Anywhere, just drive. They ended up near the river. The Han River flowed darkly, reflecting the city lights like fractured stars. He got out, lighting a cigarette he rarely smoked anymore. The smoke filled his lungs, biting and harsh, but it felt real. His phone buzzed. It wasn't business. It wasn't his mother, it was Jaiwan. "I know you hate crowds, but the moon is nice tonight. Are you okay?" Jaiwan, the art therapist his mother hadn't introduced him to. He had met her by accident in a hospital waiting room 2 months ago. He had been there visiting a lieutenant who had taken a bullet for him. He was sitting in the hallway, covered in drying blood that wasn't his, staring at the floor. She had offered him a magazine and a smile that didn't demand anything. She had asked if he wanted water. She had treated him like a human being, not a weapon or a wallet. She was safe. She didn't know the darkness. She just knew Dee, the man who didn't talk much, the man who liked jazz and hated sweet coffee. She was gentle. Being with her was like floating in calm water. It wasn't the drowning depth of his love for Alia. It wasn't the tidal wave. It was just rest, and God, he was so tired. He texted back, "I'm fine." He lied. He wasn't fine. He was a ghost haunting his own life. But he needed her peace like an addict needed a fix. Back at the gallery, Alia was making a decision. Her phone was ringing. It was Julian, the museum director she had met at a fundraiser a month ago. He was handsome, stable, and remarkably communicative. He sent good morning texts. He asked about her day and actually listened to the answer. He had never pinned anyone against a wall. He had never threatened to take someone's eyes. He was the antithesis of Dee Yun. He had asked her to dinner 3 times. She had said she was busy 3 times. Alia looked at the empty gallery. She looked at the reflection of a woman who was successful but slept in a cold bed every night. She looked at the art on the walls, expressions of passion and pain, and felt like a fraud. She picked up the phone. "Julian, hi, it's Alia. I'm free tonight, if the offer still stands." The date was nice. That was the word that kept looping in her brain. Nice. Julian took her to a bistro with excellent wine and soft lighting. He pulled out her chair. He talked about his upcoming exhibit on Impressionism, his eyes lighting up in a way that was genuinely endearing. Alia smiled. She nodded. She ate her risotto. She laughed at the right moments. But her mind was a traitor. When Julian reached for the salt, Alia noticed his hands. They were smooth, manicured. They didn't have the rough calluses of a man who fought. They didn't have ink crawling up the knuckles. They were hands that held brushes and wine glasses, not guns and steering wheels. When Julian asked if she wanted coffee, he ordered a latte for her. "I remember you said you liked warmth," he said with a smile. "She hates milk," a voice in her head whispered. It sounded like Dee Yun. Dee Yun would have known. Dee Yun knew she took her coffee black, bitter as sin, because she said it woke up her soul. Dee Yun knew she liked the burn. "Stop it," she told herself fiercely, gripping the stem of her wine glass. "Dee Yun is gone. This man is here. This man is healthy. This man won't get you killed." She accepted the latte. She drank it, even though it made her stomach turn. She let Julian walk her home. He kissed her on the cheek, a dry, polite peck that felt like a business transaction compared to the devouring kisses she was used to. "I had a wonderful time, Alia," he said, beaming under the street lamp. "Me too," she lied. As she walked into her apartment, locking the door behind her, she felt a wave of exhaustion crash over her. This was it. This was normal. This was what she had screamed at Dee Yun for, a life without fear, a life without trackers and bodyguards. So why did she feel like screaming? Why did she feel like throwing the vase on her table against the wall just to hear something break? A month passed, then 2. The seasons shifted, the air growing colder, sharper. Alia and Julian were officially seeing each other. It was easy. It was comfortable. Julian was proud of her. He showed her off at events. He didn't hide her in a penthouse or keep her a secret. He held her hand in public. He introduced her to his parents, who were charming academics. Alia felt like she was acting in a play. She learned her lines. She smiled on cue, but inside she was numb. The numbness was better than the pain, she reasoned. Numbness was sustainable. You could build a life on numbness. You couldn't build a life on an open wound. Jaiwan was happy for her. They sat in Alia's office one rainy afternoon, drinking tea. He sounds perfect on paper. Jaiwan chirped, scrolling through a picture Alia had shown her of Julian. Stable is good, Alia. Passion burns out. Stability builds. Stability is the foundation of a house. Passion is just the fire in the hearth. You don't want the fire to burn the house down. Alia stared out the window at the gray sky. Does it? Or does it just settle dust? Sometimes I feel like I'm waiting for something, like I'm holding my breath. Jaiwan reached across the desk and squeezed her hand. You're healing. Healing is boring sometimes. It's quiet. Chaos is addictive, Alia, but it's not love, it's adrenaline. Alia looked at her friend. Jaiwan was glowing lately. There was a softness to her, a secretive joy that made her look younger. And what about your mystery man? Alia asked, turning the tables. The guarded one, is he still a project? Jaiwan smiled, looking down at her lap, twisting a silver ring on her finger. He's opening up, slowly, like a flower that's been in the dark too long. He told me about his childhood last week, just a little bit, about the pressure, about how he was raised to be a king, not a boy. Alia froze. A king. It was a common metaphor, she told herself. Lots of men had egos. He held my hand, Alia, Jaiwan continued, her voice soft with affection. And his hand was shaking. For a man so strong, to see him shake, it made me realize how much he's holding back. I think I'm falling for him. Alia felt a pang of sympathy mixed with a strange, foreboding chill. She knew what it was like to love a broken man. She knew the allure of the cracks in the armor. Be careful, Jaiwan. Broken men cut you when you try to put them back together. They have sharp edges. I know, Jaiwan said softly, but I think he's worth the blood. A week later, the invitation arrived. It was a heavy, cream-colored envelope with gold lettering. The Children's Art Initiative Gala. It was the biggest charity event of the season, raising money for art therapy programs in orphanages across the country. Jaiwan was on the organizing committee. It was her baby. You have to come, Jaiwan pleaded over the phone. Julian is coming, right? It's a black tie event at the Grand Seoul Hotel. It'll be fun. Plus, I want you to meet him. Finally. Him? Alia asked, cradling the phone between her ear and shoulder as she signed invoices. My guy, he agreed to come. I told him it was for the kids and he couldn't say no. He hates these things, but he's doing it for me. That's a good sign, right? Alia hesitated. Galas reminded her of the last time she saw Diyun, the red lights, the fear, the smell of betrayal. But she couldn't hide forever. She was the phoenix, remember? I'll be there, she promised. The night of the gala, the ballroom of the Grand Seoul Hotel was transformed into a wonderland of lights and suspended sculptures. A string quartet played soft classical music, the melody floating over the murmur of the city's elite. Champagne flowed like water. Alia wore a dress of deep emerald green velvet. It was high-necked and long-sleeved, modest from the front, but the back plunged dangerously low, revealing the smooth expanse of her skin. It was elegant, armored, yet vulnerable. She wore her hair up, exposing her neck, diamonds glittering in her ears. Julian looked dashing in his tuxedo, staying close to her side, introducing her to donors. He was in his element, charming and social. You look stunning, Julian whispered, kissing her temple, the most beautiful woman in the room. Thank you, Alia murmured, her eyes scanning the room. She wasn't looking for admiration. She was looking for Jaiwan. She saw her near the stage. Jaiwan looked ethereal in a pale pink gown, her hair loose and wavy. She looked like a princess from a fairy tale. She was laughing, talking to a donor, her hand resting on the arm of the man standing beside her. Alia's world stopped. The air left the room. The music distorted into a buzzing noise. The champagne glass in her hand felt suddenly impossibly heavy. The man standing next to Jaiwan wasn't just a man. He was the center of gravity. He wore a black tuxedo, tailored to perfection, fitting his broad shoulders like armor. He stood with a posture that was both relaxed and lethal, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a glass of scotch. His hair was styled back, revealing the sharp, brutal angles of his face. And creeping up the side of his neck, visible above the crisp white collar, were the vines. The black ink. Dion. Alia couldn't breathe. She blinked, hoping it was a hallucination, a cruel trick of her trauma, but he turned his head. He looked down at Jaiwan, and he smiled. It wasn't the passionate, burning smile he used to give Alia. It wasn't the smile that promised to burn the world down for her. It was a small, tired, gentle smile. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind Jaiwan's ear. The gesture shattered Alia. That was her gesture. That was her man. That was the hand that had held hers as her world fell apart 3 months ago. Alia, Julian asked, touching her arm, "You've gone pale. Are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." Alia couldn't speak. She felt like she was going to be sick. Across the room, Di-yun felt it. It was an instinct honed by years of living in the crosshairs. The feeling of eyes on him. The feeling of a shift in the atmospheric pressure. The prickle on the back of his neck that said danger. He looked up from Jaiwan's face. He scanned the crowd, his eyes sharp, predatory. And then he saw her. Green velvet, dark skin glowing under the chandelier lights, eyes wide with shock and betrayal. Alia. Di-yun's hand froze midair. The Scotch glass in his other hand cracked. A hairline fracture, invisible to anyone else, but he felt the glass give way under the sudden, convulsive grip of his fingers. His heart, which he thought had beaten its last true rhythm months ago, slammed against his ribs like a prisoner trying to break out. She was here. And she was with another man. Di-yun saw Julian's hand on Alia's waist. A possessive, casual touch. He saw the way Julian leaned in, concerned. A roar of jealousy, dark and ancient, rose up in Di-yun's throat. It was visceral. It was violent. He wanted to cross the room, tear the man's hand off, and claim what was his. He wanted to scream that she belonged to the shadows, not the museum. But then he looked at Jaiwan. Jaiwan, who was smiling at him, trusting him, believing he was safe. Jaiwan, who didn't know that the man she was falling for was a monster who belonged to the woman in the green dress. "Di-yun," Jaiwan asked, following his gaze. "What is it? You've gone stiff." She squinted across the ballroom. "Oh, that. Alia, my friend, the one I told you about, the gallery owner." The horror was absolute. It washed over Di-yun like cold water. Alia was the friend. The gallery owner, the woman Jaiwan helped, the woman whose trauma Jaiwan was healing. It was Alia. Di-yun felt the floor tilting. Fate wasn't just cruel, it was a sadist. Of all the people in this city of 10 million, he had found solace in the arms of the one woman who knew his ex-lover. He had sought peace in the very place Alia sought healing. "Come on," Jaiwan said, grabbing his hand. "I have to introduce you. She's dying to meet you." "No," Di-yun said, his voice rough, panic edging into his tone. "Jaiwan, wait, we should go." But Jaiwan was already pulling him, eager and happy, and Alia wasn't running. She wasn't fleeing. She was standing her ground, her chin lifted, her eyes hardening into diamonds. She was watching him come closer. They met in the center of the room, a collision of 3 worlds. "Alia, this is him." Jaiwan beamed, oblivious to the nuclear tension radiating between the other two. "This is Di-yun, my mystery man." Alia looked at him. She looked at the tattoo she had traced with her fingertips 1,000 times. She looked at the lips she had kissed. She looked at the man who had promised to let her go and then haunted her every waking moment. "Hello, Di-yun," she said. Her voice was ice, but beneath the ice was a fire that threatened to consume them all. Di-yun looked at her. He saw the hurt beneath the anger. He saw the betrayal. He saw the green dress and wanted to tear it off her and wrap her in his coat. "Ms. Kuro," he replied, bowing his head slightly. Formal, distant, a stranger. Jaiwan looked between them, confused. You know each other." Alia didn't look away from Di-yun. "We've met, briefly, a business transaction." Julian stepped forward, extending a hand, oblivious to the fact that he was standing between a lion and a lioness. "I'm Julian, the director of the National Museum. Wonderful to meet you. I've heard Alia mention. Well, actually, she hasn't mentioned you." Di-yun took Julian's hand. He didn't squeeze. He didn't threaten. He just shook it and let go as if Julian were made of air. "I keep a low profile," Di-yun said, his eyes still locked on Alia. So Jaiwan said, sensing the awkwardness but misinterpreting the source. This is wonderful. Now we can all double date. Alia, you and Julian look amazing together. Doesn't she look happy, Di-yun? Di-yun looked at Alia. He looked at the emptiness in her eyes that mirrored his own. He saw the fake smile she had plastered on for Julian. She looks safe, Di-yun said quietly. The word hung in the air like a blade. Alia felt tears pricking her eyes. Safe, the insult, the accusation, the truth. He was throwing her own desire for safety back in her face. I need a drink, Alia announced abruptly, her voice sharp. Julian, get me a drink. Julian blinked. Sure, white wine. Vodka, neat, double. Julian hurried off, sensing a storm but not understanding its origin. Alia turned back to the couple. She looked at Jaiwan, her friend, her kind, innocent friend who had helped her heal. Jaiwan, Alia said, her voice trembling slightly. You didn't tell me his name was Di-yun. He goes by D mostly, Jaiwan explained, looking concerned. Alia, are you okay? You seem shaken. I'm fine, Alia lied again. The lie was becoming a habit. Di-yun couldn't take it. The sight of Alia in pain was physical torture. He stepped closer, invading her personal space, his voice dropping to that low rumble that Alia felt in her bones. Jaiwan, could you give us a moment? I believe Ms. Kuro and I have a matter of business regarding the building lease to discuss. There was an issue with the fire insurance clause. Jaiwan frowned. Now, in the middle of the gala, can it wait? It's urgent, Di-yun said, please. Jaiwan looked at him, then at Alia. She saw something pass between them, a current of electricity that scared her, but she trusted D. She nodded. Okay, I'll go check on the auction items. Be nice, D. She walked away, her pink dress swishing. As soon as she was out of earshot, the facade crumbled. Di-yun stepped into Alia's personal space. The smell of sandalwood and rain enveloped her, instantly bringing back every memory she had tried to suppress for 3 months. You look terrible, he whispered. Excuse me, Alia hissed. I look fantastic. I am happy. I am with a man who doesn't have a hit list. I am with a man who drinks lattes and remembers my birthday. You are lying, Di-yun said. I know your face, Alia. I know the way your mouth tightens when you are pretending. You are miserable. You are starving. And whose fault is that? She shot back, keeping her voice low so the donors nearby wouldn't hear. You left me, Di-yun. You walked out. You ghosted me for 90 days. You let me believe you were dead or indifferent. And now you show up holding hands with my therapist. I didn't know she was your friend, he said, his voice agonizingly sincere. I met her at a hospital. She was just kind. She didn't know who I was. She was a place to rest. And does she know now? Alia asked. Does she know you're the Shadow King? Does she know about us? Di-yun looked away. No. You coward, Alia whispered. You are using her. You are using that sweet woman to hide from your own darkness. That is low, even for you. You are polluting her life just like you polluted mine. I am trying to move on. Di-yun snapped, his composure cracking. I am trying to let you live your life. I saw you with him, with the museum director. He holds your hand like he's afraid he'll break you. He treats me with respect. I treated you with worship. Di-yun argued, his eyes blazing. There is a difference. Alia stared at him. Her chest was heaving. You gave me up, she said, her voice breaking. You said I was a target. You said you couldn't protect me. I couldn't, he admitted, his shoulders slumping. And I still can't. My brother. Jinho is in prison, but his faction is still active. If I am with you, you are in danger. If I am with Jaiwan, she is invisible. Nobody cares about a therapist. She is safe because she doesn't matter to my enemies, because she is not you. Alia recoiled as if slapped. The cruelty of the logic was breathtaking. So that's it. You settle for her because you don't love her enough to get her killed. Di-yun closed his eyes. That is not what I meant. But it is what you said. Alia took a step back. She saw Julian returning with the drinks. You have to tell her, Di-yun, or I will. She deserves better than to be a placeholder for a ghost. She deserves to know she's sleeping next to a man who is in love with someone else. I can't, he whispered. She is the only thing keeping me sane. If I lose her, if I lose that quiet, I will burn the city down. Then burn it, Alia said, tears finally spilling over. But don't burn her. Julian arrived, smiling oblivious. Here we are, vodka for the lady. Alia took the glass and downed it in one swallow. The burn felt good. It felt like truth. Let's go, Julian, she said, grabbing his arm. I have a headache. But we just got here. Now, Julian. They walked away. Alia didn't look back. She couldn't. If she looked back, she would run to him. Di-yun stood alone in the crowd. He watched her go. He watched the green velvet disappear through the double doors. Jaewon returned a moment later, beaming. Did you get the lease sorted? You look sad, Di. Di-yun looked down at her. He looked at her kind, innocent face. He felt like a monster. He felt like a fraud. He realized then that in trying to protect Alia, he had hurt everyone. He had built a fortress of lies, and now he was trapped inside it. Jaewon, he said, his voice heavy with guilt. Yes. He wanted to tell her. He wanted to confess. I love her. I have always loved her. You are just the bandage over the wound she left. But he looked at Jaewon's smile. He looked at the peace in her eyes, and he realized he was too selfish to destroy it. Not yet. He wasn't strong enough to be alone in the dark again. Nothing, he lied. Let's dance. He took her into his arms. The music swelled, a slow, melancholic waltz. They moved to the music, swaying in the center of the glittering room. But as he spun her around, Di-yun's eyes weren't on his partner. They weren't on the woman who offered him peace. They were fixed on the exit doors, staring into the dark, empty space where his queen had been. The collision had happened. The wreckage was silent. But as the vines on his neck pulsed with renewed heat, Di-yun knew one thing for certain. The peace was over. The war for his heart had just begun. He is holding the wrong woman. She is walking away. But a king always reclaims his queen. The obsession returns in part 3. Stay tuned.